Growing up as a young Arsenal fan, there's very little you can dream bigger than providing a key assist to win the North London Derby. And on Sunday, Emil Smith-Rowe, Bukayo Saka, and Harry Kane did just that. This is the Arsenal Vision post-match podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter, Yankee Gunner. Goals and assists for the Hale boys. But it's not just the Hale boys. That's right. Growing up as an Arsenal fan, you dream big of contributing in the North London Derby, and Harry Kane was able to do that. Beautiful assist for Bukayo Saka's goal. And I, for one, enjoyed the shit out of it. What a day! What a day. North London, checking, still red. Tottenham, we sing that song, what do we think of Tottenham? Shit. But like they really, really took it to heart on the day. They really, really wanted to show us just how shit they could be. I think it's one of those days, right, where you listen to every podcast, you watch every YouTube video, you read every blog, you read every article, you even seek out Nuno Dispiritus Sanctu, I think 7 a.m. kickoff called him that, Nuno Dispirited. You seek out his post-match comments where he basically said without saying that the players suck and he picked the wrong players because they couldn't execute the plan. There were funny tweets about Harry Kane celebrating with the empty away, clapping the empty away section after the game. I mean, a day where you want to just soak every little moment up. Ian Wright celebrating, and obviously you've already listened to the Arscast by now, I'm sure, but you've heard the mix that Andrew made for the Ian Wright celebrations, just beautiful, and a wonderful birthday present for Andrew. So happy birthday, Andrew, again. But that's it. That's what it's all about. And so we celebrated throughout the day yesterday, celebrating again today, and we're going to break down every last piece of what was a brilliant derby, a day that really just brings everyone together. There are very few days as fun, whether it's on social media or in the pubs or just being an Arsenal fan, than after a big win in the derby. And that is exactly what we got. And here to discuss it with me is Paul. You can find him on Twitter at Pants. Hello, Paul.
Woohoo!
And Tim, you can find him on Twitter at Stillberto. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
And Clive, you can find him on Twitter at Clive PAFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And Scott will be with us this week with an analytics pod, but I want to say thanks to Scott, who's doing great work as ever, putting out the data that behind this beautiful performance and this beautiful day. So much to celebrate. Tim, we didn't get to talk to you on the instant reaction pod, so I will talk to you first. I think, coming out of the international break, I think our sort of most circumspect and thoughtful analysis was, it's as bad a start to the season as possible, but there are mitigating circumstances. So now we joke the season starts now, but there was urgency. And 1-0 wins over relegation-threatened teams was sort of the bare minimum required, but we got there. And it gave us a platform for this day. I think we all felt going into this day that it had sliding doors ramifications in terms of what it could mean based on the various outcomes. And I think in terms of the absolute best case scenario, this is as close as you come to it. So I just want to take the macro view for a second. In terms of the raw emotion, the joy it brings, the way it just washes away some of the sort of dull, sour, down notes of football of late, and the atmosphere in the Emirates and just the whole circumstance surrounding this, how big does this feel from a momentum standpoint for the club?
Yeah, well, just imagine if it had gone the other way around. Imagine we lost. Yeah, exactly. Imagine we lost this game 3-1. We'd all be sitting here talking about, is Arteta going to get sacked? What's going on at the club? We'd probably talk about the ownership and things like that. So that tells you, like, it's almost, I don't know if this is an inappropriate way to describe it, really, but like it's almost like a schizophrenic or like bipolar type game, isn't it? It's like it's either brilliant or awful. And yeah, the range of outcomes is quite large based on things that are, well, I say marginal, but what really supercharges this victory is the manner of it. Don't get me wrong, we'd have all been very happy with a 1-0. A bit like the
Jamie
derby
own goal in 90 minutes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, or even a bit like the last derby went, where we kind of gritted out a 2-1 and we deserved it, but it was very nervy in the last few minutes and everything like that. It's the manner of this that really, really puts the seal on it. It reminds me of, I think it was 2009-10, we beat Spurs at home 3-0, that day when Fabregas scored straight from centre. And it felt a bit like that, where we just looked so much better than they did, and just fully deserved to be 3-0 up at half time, and then just kind of saw it out in the second half. And it, in terms of momentum, it's absolutely huge, and we all knew it would be. We've all had like a red circle around this game in the calendar. I mean, you always do for the North London derby anyway, but for the context of this, we have always said that this would be maybe a bit of a judgment day for Arteta, which is not to say that now we've won this game, everything is absolutely marvellous and Arteta's brilliant and will surely lead us to glory. But it's as much with derbies, a lot of the joy is actually in the absence of misery. If that makes sense, because you realize how miserable it is to lose them. And a lot of the emotion is bound up in that relief that it's not you, that you can go on social media and post all the memes and things like that. And, you know, your workplace is a nice place on Monday morning and everyone avoids you. And, you know I had several emails already that were like, oh, you must have had a good weekend. You know, it's just one of those. And it is just absolutely one of those where if we'd have lost this game in any manner, it would have felt like an absolute crisis. But now we're talking about momentum. Do you remember after the Norwich game, I kind of said we won't know for a few weeks whether this was the first building block or a pretty scrappy win against a crap team. Mm-hmm. And we can probably say it was a building block now because we got slightly better against Burnley and then we got much better here. And obviously, you know, we've got a really difficult game against Brighton at the weekend and things like that. But yeah, I mean, derbies always create, the winning derbies rather, always creates that kind of that positive emotion and momentum. That this one did a little bit more so though, because of the differing trajectory of the teams right now and because of the manner of the victory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it is a manner of victory and an emotional moment that lifts the collective heads of the club and the fans away. This dour looking down, how close to the bottom are we, mid-table existence thing that we've been dealing with, and you know whether we've sort of bought into that or not, it lifts you again. I found myself for the first time in a long time looking at the table. What's the points difference? What can we really do? And suddenly, you know, you're seeing United blow it and lose a game and the hilarious recriminations from Bruno Fernandes and, you know, Cristiano Ronaldo getting him transferred to whatever Siberian club he can because he didn't let him take the penalty. Yeah. And suddenly it has you dreaming like top four and possibilities, which I don't feel has been in there for us.
Yeah, indeed. You start thinking things like, well, Leicester look a bit crap. West Ham didn't really expand their squad, and they've got Europe, and Spurs have got Europe, and those are exactly the ramifications you start to go into. Like the world of possibilities opens up after a win like this.
And if you remember a few pods ago, and some people didn't particularly agree with this take, which was one of my takes, which makes sense. But like I'd said that Arsenal need to restore relevance again because I want to look at the United score and the Chelsea score and the Leicester score and see in Liverpool and see how we're faring against them. And this game had me doing that again. And look, we're a long way from where we need to be still, but you can start to dream of that coming back. And Clive, the funny thing is, it's a win for the players. It's a win for Arteta. We'll come on to all of that. But I think it's a win for the project first and foremost. And I know that is a word that people are so tired of hearing. But I don't think it's a coincidence. And I kind of wonder if Arteta did this by design. I don't think he would because you're coaching a game and you're trying to win it. But we finished the game with every single new signing on the pitch. Tavares, Sambi, Ramsdale, White, Odegaard, Tomiyasu. They were all on the pitch. And this summer we spent a lot of money. And a lot of people, myself included, wondered, did we spend it in a way that moves the needle? Is it more of a longer-term thing? Is it a short-term thing? And I think we're seeing it can be both a long-term and a short-term thing. But Clive, this win, first and foremost, feels like a win to start to confirm the project in the sense of we need the academy kids to start contributing. And they did. We need the new signings to be the upside that we hope they can be. And they look like it. And just that little bit of extra magic from the sort of fading senior players like an Aubameyang, we got that. And the picture looked really clear on this day. So for you, before we get into the tactical nuance, and we will, and the individual player performances, we're going to celebrate the hell out of everybody and everything. Is this a huge validating moment? And there will need to be more of them, but a huge validating moment for the project itself.
Yeah, I think it's all about direction and direction of travel and clarity in where we're going. And there's been a few things over the international break. Edu came out post the transfer window and came out and said, you know, where we're heading, the players we bought, the ages, etc., what you want to do, the academy. Perma Asaki did a great interview on a podcast last week. I can't remember the name, apologies. Podcast last week, where he spoke about templates of players, transitional players, that sort of explained the Saliba thing, and explained the project where and how he supports the first team. And I just, you know, I'm someone that looks at this anyway, you know what I mean? And I love change, and I'm all right with it. Once you work out what we're trying to do, I believe, it's right to change your perspective on how you want to see things, because these actions already happen. We bought 6 players 23 and under. We've changed 30 players in the last 2 years. So it's already happened. You can choose to support Arsenal like we were an invincible team if you want to, but we no longer are. There's no longer 2 oil teams in our league. You know, there wasn't then, there is now, sorry. Mm-hmm. And so the landscape's changed. So in my opinion, you have to adapt the way you look at the game according to the landscape, your competitive landscape. It doesn't mean that we were super efficient. It doesn't mean that we weren't dumb. It doesn't mean we missed opportunities in the transfer market. It doesn't mean that we didn't sell at the right time to recuperate funds. We wasted so much money and so much opportunity. We all know this, and we've podcasted for 5 years on this. But we are where we are now, and I've said before, it's been like an acceptance of where we are. Now let's do something about it. And I'm so pleased because I've learned a lot through speaking to you, Elliot, and Tim Paul about resale value, squad building, and to see the way we've approached it and to see it sort of manifest itself in the way we've done it. You look at all those players that have been signed or re-signed by Arteta and you're thinking, yeah, this is good. We didn't have the human connection to the project, to the team, to the club. Not many of us were fortunate enough to get into the ground during the pandemic. If you were a journalist or know somebody or got those 2,000 tickets, if you're one of those lucky ones, great. But that connection, I don't care what anyone says, to look at whether you watched it at the ground, in the pub, on the screen, wherever you watched it, when you see that, it feels different. And we never had that versus City, versus Chelsea, versus Spurs, versus Man United, the cup finals. We never had any of that. All the big days were just distant. They were clinical, doctor's surgery, football matches, difficult to connect to, and defeats are sometimes easier to connect to. And now we're seeing something else. And that, for me, is the joy of it, right? We're all fans. People are all saying, oh, yeah, I'm so glad he's changed this, he's done this, he's proved I was right. And that bullshit. We're all fans. We're all right. We're all right because we all want the team to win. And now we're winning. We are now right about what we thought about. Because he's either changed what we like or something's happened, so we're all right. When it comes down to it, we're all fans and we all want this day. Let's just enjoy it for what it is. There's going to be some rocky ones coming, and that's the test of a fan, really, when the rocky ones come. But I will say to you, sorry, go ahead, mate.
No, after you.
No, I will say to you from a change cycle perspective, from a recognition where we are, and this is the first gentle steps on where we want to be. And we know there's other layers to come when the players go, a couple of squads left to go. When they go, we can go again. And I think we can all see there's an exciting future ahead if this is allowed to maintain itself, which I hope it is. So I think we all feel the same, really. I'm almost excited. I'm excited again for the future.
Yeah, it's like the analysis is like we're in a car, and there are 2 different ways we can drive to try to get to our destination. And I might see one direction as the right. I think that'll get us there faster. I think that's the better route. And someone else might say, no, this is the right route. If we get to the destination on time and successfully, we're both going to be happy, whichever route we take. So we can debate the path to get there. We can debate, I don't want this player, I do want that player, I don't like this formation, I do like that formation. But we're debating that from a point of all wanting days like this, big wins, celebratory moments, and joy. I mean, debating football is fun. And it's not a new thing. It's not a social media thing. It's been around forever. But joy is fun too. And the funny thing is, I think the debate intensifies when the joy diminishes in some respects. We haven't had nearly enough joy, so we've had a hell of a lot of debate. But now we have joy, and I'm here for it. And I should mention, by the way, we have a lot of joy. Arsenal won 8-1 on aggregate yesterday because the women won 5-0 over City. And we would do more coverage of that. To be fair, Tim has a fantastic podcast. He already does for our blog on that. So, it's very well covered by Tim, of course. We'll continue to do more on that in the future. Paul, I'll stick with you just for a second on this project thing, and then we will get into the specific game moments and the specific performances. But look, the problem with building a squad is you don't get immediate answers about whether you're going the right direction. And even a big win, or a heavy defeat doesn't give you an immediate answer. But the fact that we did finish with all of the new signings on the pitch, and the fact that they're all contributing in ways that are encouraging, and they're all at ages where you'd think they could go up from here, and that Martin Odegaard looks like the steal of the summer. Whether it's Arteta and Edu working in tandem, or Edu picking the players and Arteta picking the system, you look at Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu is a classic example of how you want the director of football relationship to work, right? A player who, in a different system, might not be a player. He's not going to do what Trent Alexander-Arnold does. But my goodness, and the way we build with that sort of 3-2-5, and where he tucks in and provides support and uses his center back skills to win aerial duels and win all the the one-on-one duels and defends well and gives the ball to the players who are better to progress it. You can't ask for a better fit than that. So the system and the squad building look like they are working in tandem really effectively. And I'm wondering if you look at that game yesterday as sort of the best exemplar, the sort of paragon of what we're trying to create with this group of players that we've assembled.
Yeah, I think it's an absolute benchmark for what you want in a performance. And I think as well, the other thing that was exhilarating about it was that it was so crystal clear how we were playing and how we wanted to play. It was scintillating football. It was, as Tim alluded to, it wasn't just the result. We tore them a new one. And by new one, I mean wrecked them. And we wrecked them or tore them a new Can you clarify that even further? Both.
Got it.
At the same time. We eviscerated them. We decimated them. We chopped them into 10. And it was absolutely thrilling. And I think it was an expression to your point. Obviously, not everything's perfect and wonderful and whatever. But a few months ago, we wondered if everything behind the scenes was terrible and awful. And everybody was bad and nobody had a direction. And, seasons are long. We'll have more chances to prove one way or another who we are, but you come out of this game and you say that was an expression on the pitch of alignment off the pitch between ownership, management, the director of football, our manager for and on the pitch, the team, the selections, the philosophy, the strategy. The other thing I was struck with after the game yesterday, and it's been a nagging feeling for me that for a little while with this team, was under Wenger in the second half of his reign, the one thing I could always feel good about was if I was picking a Premier League team again, I'd pick this team, right? It's a bit like you've been married for 5, 10, 15 years and you look across at your wife and you say, if I was picking my wife, I'd pick that wife. First off, it'll save you a lot of trouble administratively, and she'll take it a lot better if you pick her a second time. But if you were coming back to the Premier League and saying you were a young man or woman picking a team, I'd pick this one. You look at the players: Saka, Smith Rowe, Aubameyang, Martin Odegaard, Tierney, Tomiyasu. 120 million people in Japan watching the Premier League and watching Tomiyasu, or at least a reasonable chunk of them. Gabriel, Ben White, Ramsdale, Thomas Partey. You look at those players and you say, yeah, there's a player there for everybody, somebody to excite you, somebody to get the pulse going. You look at other teams, and like, I won't go around them all, but I'm not saying everybody would pick Arsenal, but I can see why a young person coming to football now, coming to the Premier League, saying, I'm going to watch these teams for a couple of weeks, hopefully the right weeks, from game 0 Norwich onwards, and say, fuck yeah, these guys look like they got a plan. They're young. Like, this was the youngest team to win a North London derby in the Premier League era for Arsenal. There are a couple of slightly younger teams who played, one drew, one lost, but no younger team has ever won the North London derby for Arsenal. And like, it kind of comes back to the project thing, and people may or may not like the term, but fuck them. Call it what you want. Something's going on here. It may not work. It may be a glorious attempt and failure, but man, I can get behind what this is, because it's a thing and it's clear. And, you know, do you get it now, Gary Neville? Do you see what the plan is? Do you see what the strategy is? This was absolutely thrilling, scintillating. And if I were picking a team as a young person, I'd pick this team.
Yeah. I mean, if you are a young person, then you are going to have many years of watching this team grow together. If you're like us, you have to enjoy it while it lasts, because who knows how much longer we'll be around. But setting that aside.
Can I just add one quick thing? The idea that Sack and Smith Rowe are having breakfast together saying, wouldn't it be cool if we scored in the North London derby? And the other guy saying, yeah, that'd be really cool. Imagine if I could assist. And like, they actually had this conversation. What a bunch of 17-year-olds. And it's delicious. Absolutely wonderful.
I wasn't scoring in the derby at that age, that's for sure. I wasn't scoring anywhere, if we're being honest. Sorry. Yeah, I was a late bloomer. So, Tim, but before we get into the tactics, you know, just 21 minutes and the performances, 21 minutes into the podcast, just a real quick point on this. The atmosphere at the Emirates was electrifying. And I mean, it is interesting, because Arteta has had big downs in his coaching career. He's had some big ups already. Let's not forget that. But they've almost all come, both of them, without fans there. Mm-hmm. And in a way, he's been sort of inoculated from, or was prior to this season, inoculated from some of the, let's just say, less polite or less enjoyable aspects of being a coach when it's going wrong. But he was also denied the joy of it. And I think the shame of it is he starts this season and it goes about as terribly as possible. So he gets the extreme example, maybe not the most extreme, because there's still some patience with him, but extreme example of what happens with fans in the ground when you're getting hammered. This was his first chance to get the opposite. And I'm happy for him to get that. And I'm happy for the players to get that. And I just wonder, you know, how you think that dynamic affects sort of Arteta's mood, who he is as a coach, the players, their commitment to this project. Because you look at that picture they all took in the dressing room as a group after the game, and I'm sure somewhere, you know, like Roy Keane is furious or whatever. But like the ability to have that feedback, that immediate, visceral feedback, not just for the negative, but for the positive, I think is an absolutely critical part of not just being a fan, but being a player and a coach. And I'm wondering how you think that might influence the developing, the building chemistry in the group.
Yeah, well, I mean, you've only got to look at the comments of the man himself, of Arteta. He's clearly very interested in this, because he's been talking about it a lot recently. And I guess just as a kind of a note in the margin of that, I'm usually very wary of saying that fans deserve things, because I mean, we don't really, because sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. But I really think our supporters deserved that victory yesterday, because they've absolutely stuck with the team. I've written about this last week, tap your bingo mug, just about like the improved atmosphere and some of the reasons behind it. So I think part of it is just people being happy to be back in stadiums after a pandemic. But I do think there is something else there in terms of this is a new team, and we're not quite as jaded by their failures yet. Most of them, some of them haven't really had any failures yet. When you look at players like Tomiyasu and Ramsdale, who've been exemplary, a bit like Clive was saying on the instant reaction pod, right, about about the kind of the buy, like we recognize that something new is happening and something we've wanted that sense of renewal for quite a while. So I do think there are things that are going in Arteta's favour vis-a-vis the actual atmosphere with the fans, because all last season we were talking about, God, can you imagine if fans were in, like how grumpy this would be? But actually it's probably done him all right to have that period when fans weren't there, and then to have this now. And my mind goes back to, I think, the second game under Arteta at home to Chelsea, where we actually lost in the end. But I just remember the team getting a standing ovation because you could see something had changed in the application of the players. And then I think a month later we beat Manchester United and he got that. And he's always out on the pitch. At the away games so far, he's come over to the away enclosure at the end with the players. It obviously really matters to him. And, for a guy, he talks about soft factors a lot, right? As much as we view him as a very kind of technical, tactical coach, he does talk about soft factors a lot. He talks about, suffering, and he talks about like energy and enthusiasm. Like that stuff clearly matters to him. And it's not quite as far as, when Klopp first got to Liverpool and he did that, had the player, copying the Dortmund thing of having the players going up to the Kop at the end with their hands joined and everything like that. But he wanted to harness the energy of the crowd. And I really think that it's more than just platitudes. Arteta's been saying this a lot recently. And I really get the sense, I don't get the sense that Arteta really does platitudes anyway. I think he's quite a straightforward, serious guy. I think you can kind of take him at his word with things. I don't think he just said, I think he doesn't say a lot of things, but I don't think he just says things for the sake of it. And he's talked about this constantly, and you can see what it meant at the end as well when he goes up to all of the players and then, the photographer, Stuart, and how happy he was in that moment. And I really think he knows that getting the crowd on side, or at least again harnessing that energy and giving the players energy, he clearly sees that as very important. And
he's a very young guy, Tim, right? Yep. He's just a couple of years removed from being a player himself.
Yep.
So you look at what he's been through in the last year or so, and if he's had any luck at all, it was mostly bad luck. And suddenly he's back with the crowd, with the supporters, and he's praying that it's nothing like kind of what the pundits and social media is telling him. And lo and behold, he shows up and they're all there for him. If people think that's platitudes, can you imagine if you're a young 30-something-year-old manager in your first job and you show up and there's 60,000 people willing you on? That's something you've never experienced. It's one thing to be a player in a team, but to be the manager of that team and all your work is done now for the summer and you show up and you're in the stadium and they're there for you, that must be that's nothing any of us have ever experienced in our lives, I suspect.
And he said, and we made a little bit of fun of him for saying this, but in the days following the Man City defeat, he said something like, "They were my best days ever."
And then you look in his eyes when he says that. When you say about platitudes, that's a very low-key, humble way he talks. He's very connected to what he's talking about. And I don't think he's talking about on the pitch, because there wasn't much on the pitch. It was everybody and everything around him within the club, within his family, within the supporters, the actual real-life supporters he had a connection with. You could see he was affected and moved, is what I saw.
Yeah, and again, to reference something Clive said on the Instant Reaction pod about Arsenal sticking with Arteta, giving him an authority with the players, it's probably done the same with the supporters, which is not to say that everyone loves him and thinks he's the guy, but I think everyone, exactly like Clive said about the players, you can't, look, you're not going to maneuver this guy out, so, you've got to make it work. Probably a similar deal for the fans. There's probably a message there that that there's not really much point in grumbling because it's probably not going to do anything, so we might as well kind of back this and get behind this. And I do get the sense that energy, positive energy, matters a lot to him. When he said that those are the best days of his career so far because he realized how much everyone was bought in, that obviously means a lot to him. And I think he knows that supporter buy-in is at least a part of player buy-in as well.
Well, and to be fair, look, as a manager, you have to manage all different kinds of egos and all different kinds of players and all different kinds of relationships. And I'm sure Arteta will develop that over time. But he came into a team that wasn't his team with difficult players to manage. We don't have to relitigate Taps Bingo Mug, that those players and those issues. But what he has now, one of the reasons I think he's probably more joyful and a little lighter and a little more upbeat is he's managing a group of players that don't have the same reason to be a skeptic of him. He doesn't have to win them over. They came in on his watch, or they're academy kids who probably grew up watching him play and are more than happy to play for him. Aside from maybe like Aubameyang and Xhaka, who both seem pretty bought in, the rest of the team is mostly his. So, he has a situation now where he can feel really at ease to do his job and do it to the best of his ability with players that should have every reason to want to work with him. I just think that it feels a lot more like football now. Beating Spurs feels a lot more like Arsenal football. The Emirates full and cheering, and singing full-throated at the derby. It just feels right. So, look, there's still a lot of results that have to come for any of this to be meaningful longer term. But as we always sort of talk about on the big days, football isn't just about where you finish at the end of the season or the trophies you hoist. It is about the big moments. And the one thing that I will say is that, to Arteta's credit, he has delivered some big moments, even with all the downtimes. Winning an FA Cup, beating Chelsea on Boxing Day, winning away at United, and some derby victories that have been great, and this probably chief among them. So, Clive, we should get to the performance. I will just laugh, though. Tim, you always say, the most popular guy at the beginning of the season is the new signing. So it's no wonder that the fans will be happy with the team when you have, 7 of them on the pitch at the end of the game, right? It's all new signings, and it feels all new and refreshed. And I think refreshed is the right word for it. We needed this to feel fresh, and it definitely does. And Clive, a lot of that comes from the joy we get from our Hale end players. When the academy players thrive, it is a different feeling. And I know that there are going to be some people that say, I don't care if they're from Hale end, or, we signed them from Barcelona, or we signed them from some team in the Norwegian league I've never heard of. When they pull on the shirt, I support them and I'm happy. Sure, great. I just think it is natural when a kid has spent his life growing up at Arsenal, and we've known about him since they're little kids, and they come into the team that way. There is something about that connection that feels special. And for Saka and Smith Rowe to be at the absolute heart of this victory, and knowing what it means to them, and feeling like they're part of the tapestry of the club right through, to who they are as individuals. This is Hale and supremacy. That's what this is. And it's funny, right? Because you have the sort of golden boy of the Spurs academy flailing around and fading and wanting out and, wishing he could be at Man City. And you have the two bright lights of the Arsenal academy, at least, the current bright lights. There are further, more bright lights behind them, but in Saka and Smith Rowe really guiding Arsenal into victory. So I want to focus on them for a minute. We had a 2-3 superiority in midfield. Spurs lined up with a straight line of 3 midfielders, and they just got bypassed. And it looked awful. Tactically, they got it completely wrong. We exploited them. But Clive, I think we have to start with Emil Smith Rowe, who for me, and everyone's going to have a different star, whether it's Odegaard or Saka or, Tomiyasu. But for me, Smith Rowe is the star of the piece. Scores a goal, creates a goal for Aubameyang, and plays the pass that creates the goal for Saka. I thought he absolutely lived up to all the things I think he's capable of. So do you want to maybe spend a minute and celebrate the performance of the Hale end kids, but especially Emil Smith Rowe, who I think, with the 10 on his back, the new contract in his pocket, Derby Day at home, and he steps up and he had all the character to dominate the game.
Yeah, he did. And do you mind if I talk about tactically first, feeding into Smith Rowe?
No, I think that, absolutely, because I think that whole area of the pitch, the 2-3 we had versus their line of 3, I think
that's what you think, right? So I think there's some things developing here tactically, and it comes back to something that we mentioned yesterday. I think people have been watching us, but I think they've been watching a team of a year ago almost. There's almost so they don't know who we are, and I include the pundits and I include some other teams in that. And so if you watch the Brentford game, basically they went long into 2 forwards, won the first ball, won the second ball, recycled, crossed, goals, pressure, physicality. I watched Burnley try and do the same thing. We've now dealt with it because we've got people that can do it. I watched Spurs try to do the same thing, go over the top into that right-hand corner on Ben White. Ben White won his headers again. Tomiyasu, well, we know the rest of the story there. We're winning second balls. We're turning around. We're transitioning. it's as though the narrative of Arsenal, to say anything you like about Arsenal because we're crap, the analysts of the other teams have been listening to that. They haven't been looking at the changes and the potential and the fact we've got people who can run, jump, and pass the ball, progress the ball, turn.
To your point about that, Clive, just real quick, in our preview of the derby, we assumed that they'd line Son up on the right because we assumed they'd know better than to put him on Tomiyasu, who we thought could shut him down. And nope. They played right into our strength.
They did, but I wasn't sure Lucas would play, actually. And Lucas is a good player. He's probably one of their better players on the day. So by having him there, they still had that pacey player to try to get in behind on that side, but they just didn't, because we won the first ball, we won the second ball. And I think it's interesting because we've spent a little while now talking about our horseshoe of death. But the last Burnley tried to do it. They dropped into a 2 in front to screen off Xhaka and an Odegaard. It didn't really work. We got down the middle, but botched our breakaways. Spurs tried to do it, block the central areas rather than block the outsides. We still got through, a bit risky at times, but we got through. Once we did, it was all over. And I think it's really interesting. They don't realise that we're quite good. We can go tight at the back. If you give us time with the ball, we can clip it, we can fizz it, because we've got good distributors at the back now. If you go big in the air, we can win the first ball. We win it. We're actually getting better, And these teams are going to have to look at us much more closely. They're being really thick, being really thick. Now you've got players like Odegaard, Smith Rowe, Saka. Now when they get it, they're off. They're off. They're turning. They've got zigzag pitches. They're transitioning. That zigzag is key. You cut one way and you chop, you cut back the other way, and you break into space and you join in together. Tierney and Saka joining in. Man, this is good stuff. The energy, the pace. I mean, this was a transition masterpiece, this game was. And Smith Rowe and Saka absolutely in tune with Odegaard, with Aubameyang. I almost don't want to highlight any one particular player. The Hale players obviously
we're going to highlight them all.
Yeah, the Hale players obviously bring another reason for us to connect to the team. When you see two players that are signed on longer term contracts that seem to want to be here, and I always say you can't fool a fan. We know who really wants to be here, who's looking out the window, right? And Spurs have got one of those at the moment. You can't fool us. You just can't. And then we're totally bought into that connection. And then, of course, once you're bought into connection, you become a full-time 100% supporter again. And to see how they play and the intelligence by which they play, the modern way by which they play, the ability to play inside and out, I love that. The pace, the two-wayness of those two players. They've been so well schooled, both two-footed, both got their heads up, both can dance with the ball, and their off-the-ball movement is stunning. Man, there's some coaches at Hale that need to be tapping themselves on the back, because there's some good things happening there. And I just hope, we were saying a few weeks ago, I hope that this team can develop so we can keep these players. And I'm thinking, well, if it's developing the way we're seeing, there's other young players from the country going to look around and say, I want to be part of what they're doing at Arsenal. Because they seem to be having a good time. Young players getting a chance, playing in the first team at 20 with single-digit numbers on their back. That's what I want. That's what I want. And I think it's really exciting. It's really exciting. And it's going to be interesting to see what teams do now to scout us and to see how we can develop. And I think we've got players in our group now that can solve the problems that we're going to be presented with, and hope we can do it sharply enough so we can win more games than lose.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And it's a really smart point about teams maybe not scouting us properly, not understanding what we're doing. I think Arteta deserves credit, too, for the way the imagination and the creativity of how he pieced this together in terms of the personnel, because we are a back three team. I mean, you say what you want. Out of possession, we play 4-4-2. Fine. Two banks of four, and then Odegaard and Aubameyang up front pressing when we're in our mid block or our low block. But in possession, we are a back three team. It's Tomiyasu, White, and Gabriel. And
it's lovely.
That's the shape. It is. And it's a 3-2-5, and you can mix up that 5 any way you want. I think it's interesting that we're 38 minutes into this. We haven't talked about Xhaka being selected. We haven't talked about that being the big decision point that I thought it might be, or being in any way controversial or controversy, because the irony is this wasn't a Xhaka game. I mean, I think he did fine. I think he got a little fortunate with the referee on various occasions. He was definitely going in to challenges in a firm way. I guess it was for the second goal where it could have been a foul on the edge of the box. And to be fair to Xhaka, he contests that really well to spare Ramsdale.
Goal with Smith Rowe,
to spare Ramsdale, because that is, I think, a bad pass and a mistake that could lead to a goal. Instead, he does, the call doesn't go against him. His tenacity pays off, and we get the goal. So I think the big thing with Xhaka there is just he fits into this team without having to be the centerpiece of it, and that works. And that double pivot worked in that way. Now,
can I say a quick thing on that? And it's not to say that Xhaka was better than Partey, because he wasn't, right? Partey was a key part of how we played. He was right in the hot spot of this game, and like the centre backs didn't really get the ball to Partey because Spurs basically targeted keeping Partey quiet. In the 35 minutes in which we scored 3 goals, Xhaka made 29 passes and Partey made 12, which you can read in all sorts of ways. But what it tells you is Xhaka was a big piece, and he's involved in all 3 goals. And I'm not saying he had a brilliant game. He had a very Xhaka game, right? He did some good things. He did a couple of clumsy things. But if we think he wasn't really that involved or didn't do anything that significant, he was, outside of our 2 centre-backs, he was the guy playing most of the connective passes and moving things along. And so as we take a perspective on the game, him and Partey are just a very good partnership, and they find their balance. If Partey had been more open, if he hadn't been swarmed by Kane and a couple of midfielders, Højbjerg and whoever, swarming onto him, and I think it's in part why Ndombele was on that side, he would have got more ball, but the fact that he took all that pressure gave Xhaka the chance to look upfield, and he took advantage of it on playing a role in all 3 goals.
Yeah, well, so let's take the 3 goals. Let's take them apart and enjoy them a bit. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring up Smith Rowe is I think that he is the beating heart of all 3 goals in some ways. The interesting thing is, I think a lot of people talked about Joe Willock, myself included, as, could he be the Ramsey? And it's Smith Rowe that's playing that way a bit more in some respect. If you look at the goals, right? I mean, for his goal, he taps it in basically from center of the box penalty spot, essentially. For the goal he gives to Aubameyang, he starts in our defensive third, gives a pass, gets blocked off, runs the length of the pitch, turns on the afterburners, and cuts it back. And for the Saka goal, he's in deep central midfield on the left and plays a beautiful, seeing eyeball to Saka that breaks all the lines, takes all the Spurs players out of the game, and sets Saka away. So I mean he is not just playing as some sort of left wing or a forward or a number 10. He's playing more box to box, and he's doing it at both ends. So, well, Paul, I'll let you talk about the first goal for a second. I mean, that is, I think, the single biggest thing that maybe is overlooked in this performance is what it means to Arsenal when we go ahead. And going ahead as early as we did, and again, we deserved it. We deserved this win. I think we would have won no matter what. I think Spurs were crap and we were better than them. But that goal, I think once that happened, the light bulb went on and the players really saw that this could be their day. So, I mean, talk me through that goal, the player involvement in it, and, maybe just sort of how that goal becomes the key to unlocking the big victory.
Yeah, so it's about 10 minutes into it. We've had good play, but how often have we had good play that it doesn't turn into something?
Yeah, 12th minute. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and for me, the first thing I thought about when I looked back at the goal was Ben White is under the radar at the moment. I think it's going to be interesting when you guys rewatch the game, because I think Tomiyasu's getting loads of credit, and he should. And I think Gabriel's getting loads of credit. But twice he progresses. He wins 2 challenges against Kane or whoever's in his pocket straight after the other. The first is a header, and the second one is nipping ahead of him and playing the ball forward. And that's where the play kind of breaks loose. And Xhaka receives it, pings it to Smith Rowe, who plays it outright to Saka. Saka's kind of teasing and tempting right where we might have had Pepe. I think Pepe's got all the skills to go to the byline, but Saka just does it more. And especially because that's Odegaard's corner, it's so important to have somebody who works well with Saka. And here he goes, not all the way to the byline, but towards the byline, and dinks it in through Reguilon's legs. And like Smith Rowe just does the classic Aaron Ramsey, the timed run that looks so simple, clips it, puts it in the net, and like the two boys just, their breakfast conversation comes to life. It's simple, it's quick, it's direct, and the guys just find each other. It's really slick, quick passing, and they tear through them. And we basically saw it time and time again. We didn't get rewarded every time, but it was a beautiful little connection. Smith Rowe knowing when to make that run. But it starts from winning those challenges deep. And Ben White wins 2 in a row that progresses us up the pitch. And I think
he showed great in Scott's data, by the way. Scott posted a bunch of data on Twitter. And in terms of like passing contributions to goal and just his involvement in increasing whatever it is, goal likelihood or something.
Yeah.
He ranked really high.
He has this tackle he does, the reach around tackle, if you know what I mean, but with his foot, where he'll get around it. Like, you need to be like a gymnast to get your foot around the player without fouling him. He's always done this. Like, I think a lot of people got caught up in their shorts about how they were getting Brighton's right centre back. You're not. You're getting Leeds' right centre back in a midfield, in a centre back pairing. This is how he played for them. He's really progressive. He'll do 2 or 3 things a game that are eye catching, but he'll do a whole load of nipping in front of the guy and winning the ball and getting you up the pitch quicker. He speeds us and he makes us direct, and turnovers are the great playmaker. And he got 2 turnovers in a row, and the second one paid off.
Yep. Well, the second goal, though, Tim, is one that I really like to highlight because I think it creates another important talking point, which is Aubameyang. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's so much to love about this game that it's easy to miss players or moments or performances that were key to it. The second goal I like because there's a lot of things. I like that the refereeing decision doesn't go for Spurs. There were a couple of those in the game. And the fact that we not just beat the crap out of them, but also they can feel aggrieved about the referee is fantastic in my view. But there's Xhaka, sort of sparing Ramsdale's blushes with his effort. There's Smith Rowe, playing the initial pass and bursting forward. But, we always hear about Aubameyang, can't play with his back to goal and all of the cliches about why Lacazette, why not Aubameyang, what is, but like brilliant center forward play. The energy he put in this performance was great. He was always available and hustling. He won a ton of aerial duels in this game, I believe, and contested a lot more. The outside of the boot flick to send Smith Rowe away, the first touch to set himself free, the beautiful sort of just perfectly timed run into the box from Aubameyang to arrive into the position. I mean, that's what he's great at, right? Arriving into the position where he's available. The cutback is the right choice. The finish with the weaker foot is first time and beautiful. It is a great goal that I think a lot of credit should go to Aubameyang for doing not just the end piece, but a lot of the stuff that we're sometimes told he doesn't do because he did it in this game.
Yeah, absolutely. He's been doing it a little while. I think when he came on, I never bought into the whole he doesn't care anything anymore thing that kind of circulated a bit last season. I really think that was about chance creation, and Arsenal never really looked any different when he wasn't playing anyway. But what I love about the touch to Smith Rowe is sometimes a pass begs a run rather than the other way around. They used to say this about Ozil a lot. Ozil used to have that pass where actually he sees it before the runner sees it and goes, I'm going to put it there. So
the fabled invitation, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like, so you better go and run there because I've seen that space before you have. And that's the same sort of thing going on here with Aubameyang, because you can see when the ball's played forward to him, Smith Rowe has a notion that it might come back to him. But just like I bet if you watched it frame by frame, you can see the light bulb go off in Smith Rowe's head, and he goes, "Oh, hang on, I think he's going to flick this round the corner. Yes, he is. I better get onto this. And it's that provocative kind of, I don't know whether it's a pass or a flick or whether it matters, but it's the kind of play that provokes others into action, and it turns from having, successfully, if slightly harily, played out from the back, and you think, oh, okay, right, it would have been easy to go, we got the ball to the halfway line now, we got away with that. But the whole point, obviously, of playing out from the back is exactly what happens in this goal. You commit everybody high up. So the fact that it's Højbjerg who's committed right high up on the edge of the Arsenal area, that means he's not in defensive midfield anymore. And that means when Aubameyang comes to the halfway line, the centre half has to follow him. Mm-hmm. And, instantly they're just pulled apart. And incidentally, what I think really showed Tottenham's dysfunction in this goal, that Tottenham picked the same midfield they picked against Chelsea. And I wouldn't say worried about that, but that was the slightly more adventurous thing for them to do. And I didn't think they'd do it. And the reason they did it against Chelsea was to press, because they really wanted to press Kovacic and Jorginho with Ali and Ndombele, and to leave Højbjerg back. But I mean, Ndombele and Ali just didn't do it. Basically, they didn't press at all, and Ali was substituted at halftime. And given Nuno's comments after the game, I think we can determine that he wasn't very happy about that. So they're kind of all over.
It was the same midfield team, but didn't he swap the sides on them for some reason? He had Ali on the right.
Well, yeah, and I imagine that was to get Ali into Xhaka, right? And that's kind of my point. Like, what the hell is Højbjerg doing up there? Like, surely that was Ali's job. But anyway, and again, I think we've always gone too far on this idea that Aubameyang can't do hold up play and things like that. No one's saying it's his strength, and no one's saying that getting involved in the build up is particularly his strength either. But in these kind of moments, this is transitional football, right? And and I think he's a really good transitional striker to have. I think we've got lots of good transitional forwards now. And whether the pen is beginning to drop there a little bit, or whether it's just a moment in the game. But yeah, it's fantastic play, great awareness, brilliantly executed. And when the ball's pulled back to him, even on his left foot, you just don't doubt him for a second. I know he has his fair share of misses, but generally speaking, they're rarely terrible in terms of they rarely go a mile over the bar or a mile wide. He's one of those. He's a slightly risky finisher. Aguero's like this as well, because he goes for the corners, and the margin of error is small when you do that. But when it kind of just comes back to him like that, I wasn't thinking, "Oh, this is his left foot, mate." I was thinking, "This is in." And you could see yesterday he was hugely engaged, and that celebration, by the way, I mean, that's not a coincidence. He had that one prepared.
Just for anyone who's wondering what we're talking about, it's the Thierry knee slide, and Thierry's at the game. I mean, it's a perfect celebration for the occasion.
It absolutely is, and nobody can convince me he didn't have that planned.
Oh, come on. It's literally the sculpture out in front of the Emirates of Thierry Henry. Of course he's got it. I'm sure
he does the face. It's not just the slide, right? And he's got the arms and the fists.
Let me ask you a question, Tim. Honest question. Do you think he practiced that to get it right? Because it literally looked practiced.
He could well have done. I mean, obviously he was right next to them when he scored it, so it could have been a little bit opportunistic. But yeah, he had that one in the locker. And I think when you're going out for a game, we're speculating, rehearsing celebrations, it's because you're pretty damn determined that you're going to get on the score sheet.
Yeah. Well, and he did. Can
I add quickly on it? So this was a goal we played out from the back. It was Ramsdale. It was that risky pass, but it's definitely an advertisement for ballsy play from the back. Then Xhaka uses his big arse to shift Højbjerg. Had we had a different midfielder, I'm not sure he would have had the robustness to shirk off. The one reason it's not a foul is because Xhaka's kind of arsing him somewhat effortlessly, because he's got lead in his arse and he can easily shift him. And then he doesn't take the easy pass to Tierney, which is the obvious one. He does a quick pause and then bangs it up to Smith Rowe, which breaks that move open. And you guys have kind of covered it from there. But the genesis of that and why Smith Rowe and Aubameyang could run into so much space was Spurs loaded up horribly on Ramsdale and Xhaka, and they Xhaka's arse managed to turn it around for us.
Yeah. Well, Clive, the funny thing is, you look at all of the goals, and only the third goal is like this, but there's 4 guys in the box for the first, 4 guys in the box for the second, and 3 guys in the box for the third. The thing that I think is really changing and that really looked different about the way we attacked is that the ball goes forward. We recover possession and the ball goes forward. And this is where I think Odegaard and Partey, it makes such a big difference. And the directness of Smith Rowe. Smith Rowe is just such an old school footballer. I run forward, I pass forward, the ball goes forward, I go forward, I go box, ball goes in net. Like that's him. He's like Neanderthal progressive player. Like just get me forward, get ball forward, get me in box, get ball in net. Like that is him. And there's obviously a lot of technical quality there. But if you look at like the pass he plays to Saka, it's just sensational for the third goal. But that forward momentum, I think Odegaard is the easy player to overlook in this game if you're just looking at the big moments. But his quality is dripping on all of these goals. And the funny thing is, if you look at the first and second goal in particular, like look at Smith, if you go back and watch the first goal where Smith Rowe's standing when he scores it, look where Odegaard is. He's 1 foot away from him too. He's center of the box, found some open space that he's sitting in. He's crashing into the box for the second goal as well. And, for that, I guess the first goal, he carries the ball forward, he gets it off Xhaka and goes forward immediately. Off we go. So, I'm wondering, Clive, if you think that there's something changing with Odegaard here, because the Odegaard we saw on loan was talented and helped us and improved, and there were some injury issues, so it didn't quite come off all the time. But he had moments where he would flit in and out of games. The Odegaard we're seeing this season as an Arsenal player, influential, energetic, pressing, covering ground, moving the ball forward at every opportunity. And I think it creates a greater urgency to our attack. He's one of those players that I think if in your mind's eye, he was always going to be playing passes, final ball passes for assists, maybe you haven't been getting that. But I think what he's doing is a lot more influential. He's stitching everything together and moving the ball forward from back to front. So I'm curious what you think of this Odegaard performance, but also the Odegaard role, which is maybe, a little more of a two-way player than the sort of mercurial playmaker we might have expected.
That you might have expected. I think
he's a little more two-way player than the mercurial playmaker I might have expected. There you
go. I think, again, you can see, this is where data is helpful. You can see the amount of pressures that he makes. Yep. So that you already know the answer to that one. So I think for me, the bigger change is, yes, he's got centrality. Yes, Partey's got that. So we've seen that since last season. He really stood out West Ham away when it hit us all. But, it's been a continuation. That's why teams are trying to stop us down the middle now, because they know we can get out. And the reason is his ability, I'm not sure which goal it was, but it might have been the last Saka's goal, actually. When it got to Odegaard, there was a risky square pass on immediately. But he just has 2 touches to make that pass perfect. Do you know what I mean? And it's that decision-making, that technique to move it one way and cut it the other way that creates the opening, which makes the next pass obvious. So Smith Rowe zigzag out to Saka, and we're into step over land, right? And that's where we are. So I think his decision-making, as well as his quality, is really, really key. But the most important thing is, and it's been a consistent theme since post-international break, is our ability to run forward as a group. We're getting 5, sometimes 6 runners sprinting and outrunning their opponents. Burnley game was a really good game. We just left 2 to 3 goals out there. But we did the same things. We sprinted back. We transitioned on them, and we drove through them. And we had like 4 against 2 on some breakaways. And it was there in that game, but the execution wasn't there. On a sunny day at the Emirates, when the pitch has been well watered, mate, those passes, they're not stopping. This isn't Tufty Moor. Do you know what I mean? This is a proper pitch, a proper Premiership ground, and those passes were zipping along at the pace we wanted them to go. And so for me, I look for sustainable trends, and the sustainable trend is we are 5-laning them to death. We are getting 5 people up and 3 inside and sometimes 2 on the outside. We've got people in each lane perfectly, and they're being aggressive with their movement, and they're committing to their runs. When Aubameyang knocked it round the corner, his commitment to the second phase run, the secondary movement, was huge. And he 100 miles an hour, then he slows down at the box. He can slow down because of his original commitment. And then he can slow down, then he can stride onto the ball on his weak foot goal. It's a commitment to the run which makes the passing obvious. If you don't commit, you don't create the separation, you don't make the pass obvious. And so that tells me they are working on this on a training ground, because it's not just one guy doing it, it's 5, 6 guys doing it, which means that this is a collective effort. This is one of the principles of play, and this is how we're going to work. And what you're seeing is the players that are able to make those passes. And then we can say, okay, we're giving this many forward passes, we're not going square anymore. When you've got committed runs, you better pass forward or you're getting it. Do you see what I mean? And that's the difference. It's the movement, the aggressive movement, as well as the quality of the pass. And we said on Friday, I think it was, have we got a superstar developing Odegaard? I'm asking myself that question. An Arsenal superstar or a league superstar, I don't know, but he's 22 years of age, international captain, and he is improving by the minute. So where does this end? Right? He's obviously had he was a child film star, shall we say, and he's now coming. He's got his first. He's got his second. His first proper move as an adult. His first proper contract as an adult, and he looks really at home at Arsenal. And
he looks all right, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to watch how his development. I saw something the weekend, and I don't know the background, so I saw Brendan Rodgers bring on James Maddison for Lookman at the weekend, and there was loads of boos. I'm not sure if it's at Rodgers because he chose the wrong player to take off. I don't know if it's at Maddison, but it just goes to show you, right? You get your recruitment right, it's all good. You get it slightly wrong, and things, you get questioned. And I think the club got this one dead right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, heat maps aren't always helpful, right? Because, Clive, like when you look at a heat map, sometimes what they're telling you is, they can be confused by playing differently in 2 halves, or the players switch sides. But I think the heat maps with Smith Rowe, Odegaard, and Saka are really interesting because they really do tell you, I think, what he's trying to achieve with the formation, because Odegaard is all over the pitch, everywhere. Smith Rowe is sort of left half space attacking. Saka's the right wing, and that's the lane, right? So it's Tierney, Smith Rowe, Aubameyang, Odegaard, Saka.
Yep.
And those are those 5 lanes. And it's really, maybe this is a chance for you to sort of talk a little bit about how Tomiyasu enables this, right? Because, I'm sorry, look at the lineups we put out in those first 3 games trying to play this system. Marie, Chambers, Holding, no chance. No chance. Now it's White, Gabriel, and Tomiyasu. And guess what? It looks totally different. And I think Tomiyasu is a real key to that, because you cannot get Joy down that side. And that enables Saka to go be that sort of wide forward, and he doesn't need the support. And then on the other side, you have Tierney running the touchline as well. So, do you think that's really the key, is that group of 3 at the back enables this 3-2-5 buildup?
Yeah, and we hoped it looked this way on paper, didn't it? It looked this way. We knew we had Gabriel as a real defensive monster. We know he is a little bit rash, but we think, you know what, he could work. He does progress the ball quite nicely. It could work. Ben White, we knew what he was: an interceptor, smooth on the ball, distribution of both feet, quite quick, a reader of the game. But he needed a bit of strength next to him. He needed something else so he can work from, to cause trauma and distraction so he can sweep around. And Tomiyasu is that trauma agent, just smashes everybody in the air, on the ground. When you give him the ball, it comes out of his feet really, really quickly, and we're off to the races. So the balance is good, and it just looks neat to me. And it's also, and I know you've all spotted it, all 3 of you, it's enabled our other centre midfielder to stay in centre midfield. And I think that's really, really key. So we can now go and engage teams. When they go long, the second ball, we can take it because we've got 2 people there to sweep round. And when they turn around, they've got Odegaard saying, give it to me. Smith Rowe saying, I'll have it. Saka saying, I'll have it. So you've got 3 escape artists right in front of you. They escape, and we're off. right? And so the system and the balance looks really nice. I said, because I'm turning to you, Elliot, I'm starting to worry that if we pick up an injury to any of these players, how do we repeat it? And that's the thing that's a worry for me slightly. But particularly the back players, really, I think they've really shown how important it is to progress the ball, but make sure you win your duels in all different facets of the game. And I think that gives us a little bit of stability and stable, and that stability is enabling us to play. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Well, you made the point, and I think it's an important one, that we maybe saw a little glimpse of what could be against Burnley, but it was bumpy, it was rough, it was overgrown. And then when we got on that beautifully manicured pitch at the Emirates, well, then we saw what it would look like when it's properly manicured, when it's properly, dare I say,
resplendent,
manscaped.
Ooh.
That's right. If you want to play like those Arsenal players did in the North London Derby, if you want to be victorious in life, if you want to see all of your moves come off, then the right thing to do is not have the Turf Moor pitch, have the Emirates pitch. The best way to get that is with Manscaped. I don't need to read about pants pumpkins. If you're new to the podcast, I get copy from Manscaped. Say, read this. Said something about pants pumpkins in their copy. I'm not going to talk about pants pumpkins. Just did it 3 times. Point is, here's what you do. Go to manscaped.com, use promo code ArsenalVision, you get 20% off and free shipping. You get the Lawnmower 4.0. It's wet, it's dry, it has long battery life, it has contactless charging, or not contactless, but you just set it in the thing and you get the idea. It has the different sizing things. It has a button lock. Look, it is simply said the best purpose-built device for grooming. You're going to groom. You're going to groom, so get the tool that does it best, and it does it best. And then, by the way, they got the one for the nose and ear hair called the Weed Whacker. They've got tonics and lotions and all kinds of things. Go to manscaped.com, promo code ArsenalVision, 20% off and free shipping. At this point, I don't know who's left who hasn't done it, but you don't want the Turf Moor pitch. You want the Emirates pitch. This is how you get it. Please go there. Please support them. They're great. Also, Mint Mobile, what's their secret sauce? They're a mobile phone company that does not have stores and advertise, all the what's it called? The overhead. That's the thing. They don't have the overhead. And so they pass that savings on to you. So they sent me a SIM card, and I'm like, okay, well, let's see. Pop SIM card in. 5G, beautiful service, everything great. You know the difference? It's $15 a month. Unlimited text talk. That's pretty cool. Data on the United States, anyway, nation's largest 5G network. I mean, if you've got a teenager who needs a phone or a young person that needs a phone for an emergency purpose, like, you don't need another $80 line cell phone. The point is they have a 7-day money-back guarantee. So you can just get the SIM card, pop it in, see what you think. If you like the service, it's $15 a month. Done. I mean, it's just such an easy way to use the nation's largest, most powerful 5G network to get all the unlimited talk and text that you need. Go to mintmobile.com/ArsenalVision. mintmobile.com/ArsenalVision to get your $15 a month service, and it'll be shipped to you for free when you go to mintmobile.com/ArsenalVision. And I got to say, guys, that I have, I think, done those as quickly as I ever have. So, it's Derby Day. We're talking Derby. It's not necessarily a day to feature the sponsors. We love the sponsors. But, Clive, is that enough of that?
Beautiful link to Manscaped. Beautiful.
You set me up, but we got away from it a little bit, but I felt that it was okay to roll it back. I want to stay with you for 1 second, Clive. The thing that I think some people will say is, second half, we didn't keep our foot on the gas, and why didn't we just go crush them? And the one point I want to make is I think the Derby is a lot about adrenaline. I mean, we even saw the goalkeeper cramping up at the end of this game. I think that adrenaline runs high. You're 3-0 up. And I think it would be easy to just be flying and start to think it's all fun and, go out and just attack. And suddenly you leave yourself exposed and you do something silly and the game's getting away from you. And I would have thought that at halftime, Arteta would have said, guys, this game's won. They got nothing about them. They're shit. Be professional, refocus, try to bring the adrenaline down a little so you can just do your job professionally. I was never nervous in the second half. The funny thing is, actually, in the pregame pod we did, I predicted a 3-1. I thought Spurs were crap. They looked like crap. But I don't personally have a problem with the way the second half played out. I think that's the professional way to just try to take the heat out of an occasion that is very adrenaline filled. So do you have any thoughts on what I would call a professional second half, but I think what some people might have felt a little disappointed about in terms of not building on the big first half?
Yeah, well, firstly at 3-0, I was still nervous. I was in the ground
I'm supposed to be Whiskers, not you.
Man, I'm telling you, anyone who was in the ground on the 4-4 felt the same as me. Trust me. And so until very late on, I started to feel comfortable. When I started to see red seats in the Spurs end, I thought, this is we may have them now. Do you know what I mean?
Well, that was at the half-hour mark for the record.
So I'll tell you what, if you watch, I know Paul has probably watched this, if you watch the very first 10 seconds of the second half, I think we go towards Tomiyasu in the right-hand side, and he goes up for a header and he absolutely cleans everybody out. And I thought, excellent. First 5 minutes, let's get after them. Let's make sure they don't feel they can push us back. Let's get into them. Let's smash them. And I loved it. I thought that set a tone. So you can always listen out for the halftime team talk. He went straight up and smashed them. And I thought after that we were quite engaging, and they had their moments, but I thought we were fine. The only time they scored when we were literally down to 10 men, I think we'd have blocked the box if Xhaka was on his feet still. I don't mind what they were doing. I don't know what you guys think, but just moving the ball around, showing some assured control without always having to control the football, I think is good. You get your 4-4-2 block. You have people, he brought on 2 sprinters in front of the 2 fullbacks towards the end of the game in Nuno and Maitland-Niles. So I'm thinking, well, good luck getting past those 2. And I think it was just smart game management. And, from the last 3 games, I know we've won them all, and it's easy to say that it's all gone well, but I will say the last 3 games, the substitutions, the systems, the selections, how we play has been really quite well managed by the manager, really well managed and almost to perfection. And okay, we butchered a few chances on the breakaway, but what we've done, how we've approached it, I can't find a fault with it apart from execution, and I think, and there are other soft factors which we're all picking up on about the overall connection between the players, the club, the fans, and within the team, I think are all manifesting themselves into something that you'd be stupid not to get on board with and try to support. And the challenge is when the bad day comes, when we kick one in our own net, how are we going to be and how are we going to react and how are we going to recover? And I think that's the next challenge for this group, who some of them haven't had a really bad day yet in some of them. So we'll see.
You're right. But here's the great thing, right? We conceded a goal and that sucks. But when you've scored 3, you still win, right? I mean, the point is, what I love about this game is we didn't make it a game of fine margins. We put this game to bed with a half hour or so of rampant football where we took our chances. And because of that, you give yourself some margin for error and you give yourself a much easier second half to navigate. And I just think, under Arteta, if there's been one problem, well, there's been more than one, to be fair, but it's just been a game of 2 fine margins. Now, you can't always go out and score 3 goals. I get that. But, if you can play attacking football like this, if you can be this direct and effective and incisive with your attacking play and get the goals, you make the game so much easier. And this didn't feel like a game of fine margins because we went and took the heat out of it early and then took our foot off the gas, which I think was right. The only question, Tim, I have about taking our foot off the gas, though, is whether the substitutions came a little later than you'd prefer. Look, we went into this game with every single first-team player available, I believe. And this was supposed to be the idea of not having European football, right? Oh, you can concentrate on the league. You can focus on the league. And I realize it's very, very early in the European campaign, so maybe too early to say. But if we're going to be in this situation where players can go 90 minutes every Premier League, where we don't have to worry about them fading, where we do have a full, first choice 11 that we can choose from, suddenly that does start to look like a pretty big advantage. So do you have any thoughts on the timing of the substitutes and just the freshness of the team in general and the ability to choose basically whoever he wanted?
Yeah, it makes a big difference, and also because most of them didn't play against AFC Wimbledon the other night either, so they really did have a week off. I think there's something developed. I think Clive's note of caution is right in terms of we've built a first 11 now, but it's do we have when Tomiyasu takes a knock or something, like, shit, what the hell do we do then? Or we've seen several times with Partey already, but this probably isn't the day to worry about that. But one of the things I'm actually quite drawn to is the idea of Tavares as a sub, actually. And this is probably something that I and maybe many others underestimated in terms of the value of having Tavares, because my view was always, and to some extent still is, that he was the least important signing of the summer in many ways, because really the range of outcomes for Tavares' Arsenal career are small, because he's probably not going to be better than Kieran Tierney. So he'll either not be that good and go, or he'll be good and get sick of not playing and go.
Yeah.
So I tend to think like Tavares probably won't have another Arsenal contract. But what's been really interesting actually is his effectiveness as a sub. I think he's a really good match finisher, just because he's quite chaotic, and I don't think I'd trust him that much to play for 90 minutes in an important game because he's so chaotic. But I actually think it makes him quite a good candidate to finish a game. Whether you're doing what we were doing, which was defend it, in which case, stick him on the left wing. Don't put him on at left back, but put him on the left wing, because when he gets the ball, he just wants to charge. And so that's quite useful when you're in a position where you're kind of looking to play within yourself a bit. Mm-hmm. And if we're trying to get a goal, then why not throw him on at left back, and he'll do largely the same thing, I'm sure. So I quite like the idea of him as a finisher of games. Sambi we've seen plenty of already. I do think substitutions maybe came a bit late. I view the second half slightly differently. Actually, this is really small beer in the kind of in the scheme of things, but I would have liked to have seen us go for them still. I think there's a distinction here between, because we've seen this before, we've done it against Chelsea, we've done it against Manchester United before, go 3-0 up and then call off the dogs in the second half. The difference is Chelsea and Manchester United are good, and Tottenham aren't.
Spurs are shit. Yeah, they are terrible.
I really think we could have beaten them 4 or 5-0 here.
Can I ask you about that? If we were a team that didn't have some of the demons in our very, very recent past, I could see that happening. But do you think, in light of the significance of this win and just making sure it was secure, and a team that's still maybe not 100% convinced of itself, that there's just that little seed of doubt in the back of their mind that may have prevented him from saying, go on, step on their throat and make it 5, 6, 7,
Yeah, quite possibly, to be honest. And look, in a derby as well, we're all nervous when we're watching. The second half is something I'd probably go and watch back, because like Clive, I'm still really tense during that second half. And
can I add on that, Tim? Because
sure.
The one thing I'm thinking with this is the second half isn't just a kind of an average. We come out of the blocks pretty fast. Now, obviously, something happens as we go. The further the game goes on, the more we think, hang on, we've 60 minutes has gone and we got 3 goals. Maybe we dial it back risk-wise, but we don't come out in the second half to sit deep. I'm watching it right now, 52 minutes I'm on to now. We're doing all of the attacking. We're really aggressive. So it wasn't the plan. It's not how we started the game, but something happens somewhere along the second half where we start thinking, 60 minutes, 60 whatever. Of course, they score sometime around then. That doesn't help either. That's at the point at which we say, all right, let's bring down the variance options here and make sure if there is another goal, it's 1. But it doesn't start with us. It's not a game where we started the second half saying, let's be cautious. We're going for them.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of truth in that. Yeah, and I'm certain that Arteta didn't really want the second half to go like that. I think my other slight problem with playing like that sometimes is it's very difficult to not play like that anymore. So if Spurs score on the 60th minute and again on the 70th minute, you're fucked at that stage because you can't flick the switch.
You're trying to get a cold engine restarted. Yep.
Exactly. So that's my, like I say, small bit. And I guess you could look at it the other way and say, well, okay, you're saying Spurs are shit, so they're not going to break us down, are they, really? And, you know, I suppose they did. On another day, it would have gone to 3-2, that Lucas Moura deflected shot. I do think it just leaves you open a little bit. But then again, you know, that's our first choice back five out there now with Xhaka and Partey in front of them. Like, we definitely look more defensively solid. I had a notion the second half would go like that. And to be honest, I still thought we'd win. I thought we'd win either way. It's just, this is the fan in me. I completely understand the players doing what they did and how much it was by instruction and everything else. And look, as a fan, you always want to win by more. But I felt there was scope to win by more. I really do.
I think that's probably right. And I sort of wonder, if we had held it to 3-0 just a little longer, are the subs maybe like Pepe instead of Maitland-Niles? You know what I mean? Did that tilt his thinking in terms of, should I go on and have a little fun at the end of the game here, or should I go on and lock it down? And he chose to lock it down. I think it is interesting that Maitland-Niles, I think he's appeared in every game since the international break. Is that right? Am I right in thinking he's appeared in every game? So, like,
Pepe was due to come on, by the way. He was literally about to come on. And just to add one thing on the end of the game, I think, and this is something that we've done continuously now, the last 50 minutes of a game, how many dead bodies on the pitch do we have? You know,
a lot of cramp,
a lot of cramp, a lot of people limping. You know, Partey, Tierney, Xhaka in this game, obviously he hadn't played for a while. He was due to come off. You know, a lot of players not ending the game strong. Tomiyasu just settling in, though he was a bit fitter in this game. So we've really sort of not quite got to the peak levels of fitness yet to really hammer these teams. There was a 5-0 there for us if we were in tip-top shape, because they weren't very good on the day, but we did fade. And I think it's more, when you fade, you drop and you squeeze and you close distances and you just leave minimal effort required to keep them at bay. And I think we just chose that route in the last quarter.
Yeah, and you may think of it as the old players that fade, but I think very young players still struggle to maintain a 90-minute fitness. So the irony is, I thought that the Smith Rowe, Saka, Odegaard pipeline that had been very progressive, a lot of hard running, a lot of certainly adrenaline you used up, I think they all faded, actually. And so that sort of, that very direct pipeline from back to front sort of got short-circuited a little bit. The interesting thing, Paul, is that like the clear plan Tottenham had was to get the ball to Son, isolated one-on-one in that sort of left half space, left channel, and then their left, our right, and then build from that. And I just think they totally underestimated Tomiyasu, and I'm sure it won't be the first time he's underestimated, but I wonder how long that'll go on, because he is just absolutely rock solid defensively. And I love the moment where Ramsdale palms away the Kane shot. And that's really good from Ramsdale. He takes it so early. And so I think you wouldn't expect him to shoot from there. Now, it might just be going wide. He gets a palm on it, but maybe not as strong as he'd like. And Tomiyasu first to it, clearing it away, and the sort of high five they share, both appreciating the work done by one another. I thought Tomiyasu, in a game where we weren't under the cosh by any means, and where he wasn't exactly, contributing anything to the attack in a meaningful way, still managed to show his importance, because once he was able to shut down the main route of attack that Spurs had planned, they didn't have a plan B. And I think that was a big part of how the game played out. So do you see it the same way? Do you see his influence in shutting down Son as one of the big reasons why Spurs really had very little offer?
Yeah, and I think they also loaded up that side from time to time with Harry Kane. Mm-hmm. Like, they definitely were probing for. He
was hilariously shit, by the way. Like, one of the goals starts from him. Partey takes the ball off him after he just sort of like loses control of his limbs and falls to the ground. Do you remember that one? I don't know which goal is it. It's Partey gives it. So it's probably, it's the third goal, I think.
It's Saka's goal, because he ends up getting with the assist for Saka as well.
Brilliant. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, £150 million Harry Kane. It's amazing, really.
Clapping an empty away end at the end of a derby. Love it.
Yeah. Daniel Levy, the negotiating genius. It's lovely to see. £53 million and Ndombele. You start to feel better about some of your choices along the way when you look at Spurs. God bless them. I think Tomiyasu's been great. I wasn't sure what we had there. You guys did the what would you call it, the scouting video on him, and I thought what was in there looked really good, but you just don't know. He's defensively so solid. He's fast. He's strong. He's big. He's mobile. He's a force, and basically teams are going to work out. They're not getting any joy down that side. If they're thinking they can get at Ben White and past Tomiyasu, it's not going to happen. And they're probably underestimating Ben White, by the way. He's been excellent. You hear from Arteta's comments about him being disciplined and focused, and he's come straight in, speaks good English, and certainly good enough for this. And hopefully he brings 120 million Japanese viewers with him, and we get a whole tranche of Japanese supporters and a new generation here, because this guy could be like, I said this about Tierney, and a lot of people quibbled with it in the early days, but he's a lifer. Tierney is not, unless there's some weird circumstances, you've got him for life, or for the best part of, and you got, for me, Tommy, like, where is he going to go? This is where he wanted to be. He's a lifer for us too. And when you have that kind of solidity on both wings from fullback, like, we're just in great. Where's Gabriel going to go? Ben White is probably the best part of a lifer here. As long as they all perform, as long as they get to the levels where we love them, they love us, they're basically starting every game. You have your back four locked up for years, and you can build on that in front of them. Thomas Partey, if he stays fit, and I believe he will this season, we'll start to see we've got him for years, right? He's got the physicality and the athleticism to be a player. He's got the skills, he's got the smarts, he's got the vision of the game. Ramsdale, we need to see a lot more of him to really know who he is, but like, we love what he is so far and the personality he brings. You got a hell of a back six there to build on over time. And I think Tomiyasu, the way we use him as an inverted fullback, pulling into midfield, uses all of his strengths, doesn't ask him to overstretch his, maybe it's not weaknesses, but it's not his strength to get into the final third, to overlap, to put in crosses. I joked before about having gone and looked at highlights videos, and they all stop right after, in his attacking movements, they all stop right at the moment where he kicks that ball in for the cross. I've no idea where they go, but nowhere good. So he's great at everything, but putting in crosses in the final third, and we have ways around that because we attack up the other side. He's been great. He provides a platform. Like, you can sleep at night with that defense. That's what I think. I was we were all very nervous about the Ben White thing after Brentford, and was this a miscalculation? And now we can all relax and say, this all makes sense. It all
makes sense. And it makes sense because they're complementary pieces. Well, we're going to be saying this a lot this season, right? Because I don't think, Ben White comes off looking fantastic in this game, doing Ben White stuff, going and hunting down Kane up the pitch, giving the ball in ways that help start attacks. In the areas where he's maybe a little weaker, defending in his box, around his box, he has the coverage he needs in Gabriel and Tomiyasu. And, oh, by the way, Aaron Ramsdale. And I tend to think that fans sometimes overrate saves. That most of the, what a great saves are actually just saves any keeper should make, and the player has hit it too close to the keeper. But then there are some saves that are worthy of being lauded and focused on. And the one he makes from, was it a Lucas Moura deflected shot? Yeah. That he tips onto the bar and defies gravity. Yep. I mean, I have absolutely no idea how he does that. Yeah, the hang time is incredible on that. And Clive, I want to do two things with you. One, just really quickly, maybe you could talk about Ramsdale. He deserves a mention. Look, I never thought keeper was the most important position. I'm still not sure. I'm convinced it's the most important position for us to have had to address. But it's not just what he's doing. A little bit better distribution, a little bit better command of his area, whatever you want to say. There is just a camaraderie with all of these younger players together, and his character and who he is as a person that seems to be a bit more infectious. And I think we freshened up the back line. Gabriel's relatively new, White's new, Tomiyasu's new, Ramsdale's new. It's a new group, and they can grow together and kind of become their own thing. And maybe that's just part of it, the sort of psychological side to it. Because, I think it'd be wrong to suggest that Leno was ever bad. I mean, he was a candidate for being player of the season 2 seasons in a row, but certainly in terms of attitude and just the character he brings to the position, there does seem to be a real enthusiasm about Ramsdale and for Ramsdale that transmits to the fans and back to the team. So is the Ramsdale influence, sure, he still has to play well, but is it more than just about playing? Is there something more to it than that?
Yeah, it always is, mate, for me. Alexis Sanchez, I thought, was a wonderful player. In my view, one of the best players has played at the Emirates for Arsenal. But he didn't really connect to the fans. He just played for us really, really well and scored goals. Right, and if
our fans were all dogs, I think he would have connected to them more. 60,000 dogs at the stadium, they would have loved it.
Yeah, and Leno's another one who had some great moments, but he didn't really connect to the fans. Ramsdale's having some good moments, but he connects to the fans. We all love him. It's very simple. You gotta have that connection, and I think this is something that the club is doing. I also think it's a way of managing modern media, shall we say. You can't manage 20 million Arsenal fans with a keyboard, but you can manage the match-going fan, the whole experience, the 4,000 away fans, by respecting them, by talking to them, by giving them their shirts. But that transmits,
Clive, because the other 20 million fans are watching that.
That's where I was going.
Off that energy. Yeah,
that's where I was going. Right, so you can't manage 20 million, but you can manage the 55,000 at the Emirates. You can make sure you show that you're doing something for them that transmits to the crowd. You can make sure you operate as a better organisation, a better team that's prepared. You can make sure you respect the match-going fan, home and away. And once you do that, once you create that connection, everybody else, those 20 million, start to watch. And this is how you manage the modern world, the modern media. But you can't be the hostage of TalkSport. You can't be the hostage of all these other chat shows out there waiting, and multiple YouTube channels waiting to smash you on the head every time you do something wrong. You can't manage that, but you can manage your own show. You can manage what you can control. And I think it's been a direction, a strategy from the club from top to bottom to make sure they are connected to people. And then from that small shoot, it then fans out to the global club that we actually are today. Right. So I think this is something that Ramsdale brings on board. And I've said it before, you look at Arteta's interview, as soon as he talks about me, bursts into laughter. The poor kid had to knock off his Instagram comments before he even signed for the club because of dumb reporting and people taking bits of information and then creating their own view and slagging him before he even signed because they've decided it was too much money, without knowing the strategy going forward. And now, as soon as you saw the signing video, you thought, hold on a minute. Some people thought this guy's a nice guy, and then he starts playing well, and then it goes from there. And just give it a go, right? And I think what they're trying to do is to have these players that are transmitting effort, work rate, desire, as well as technical quality and physical quality on the pitch. And their motivations seem clear. And once you get a clear group of people with the same motivations, you got a chance. And then you're at the hostage of events and the ball is round and the grass is green and we go from there. But you got a chance when everyone's on board in the same place. And I think we've seen the start of that. I'm absolutely so excited for everybody who's been through the bumps we've been through over the last 5 years. And we've got a few more to go yet, but we've seen the start of something different.
Yeah. I mean, all in all, the day just went about as well as you could ask. I mean, could it have been 5-0 instead of 3-1? Maybe, but certainly from where we were, I don't think you can have any complaints. I think what Ramsdale offers in character and the connection he's making with that, let's call it what it is, back three, if you want to call it a back four, fine. I mean, whatever, it's beautiful. And there is a foundation of players who will grow together in this team. There are positions that will need to be refreshed again soon. But for now, you can at least see the path back to moving upward, which was harder to see a few weeks ago. Tim, a couple of little things that we can pick out of this game. One thing, just by the way, Arsenal fans love nothing more, maybe not Arsenal fans, just fans, online fans, love nothing more than making a compilation of all the refereeing decisions that went against them in a season and saying we could have been second in the league if these decisions hadn't gone against us. And interestingly, those compilations never contain the decisions that went for you. This was a day to get all of those decisions back. And I loved it. Couldn't have happened at a better day than Derby Day. But like, did you sort of enjoy, I mean, because look, we know two things will really, really upset you. Losing Derby and also feeling like you didn't get any calls. And Spurs didn't get any calls. And I loved it. I'm curious, do you have any sort of thoughts on like the Xhaka maybe sort of foul, the Harry Kane maybe sort of penalty?
Yeah.
And just the fact that like Xhaka gets out of that game with no yellow card. It's absolutely sensational. Like, you just shithoused his way around the pitch without getting a card. Do you have any thoughts on maybe us getting finally the rub of the green with the calls?
Yeah, and look, this is part of some of the directives as well. VAR is interfering a lot less in games this season, and it is much, much better for it. As a very, very strong VAR skeptic, it has been much, much better this season. And in the ground, I've not felt like it's I've not felt like it's the sword of Damocles waiting to take everything away quite as much. So I'd still prefer not to have it at all, but this is much better. So I think there's a bit of that as well. I think, for example, the white on Kane, I think last season that would have been pulled back and probably given a penalty. But obviously there's also the quote unquote let it flow directive. And this is quite interesting actually, because one of the things the Premier League seems to do is have like a new thing every August that they're going to crack down on or that they're going to do. And then it always follows the same pattern. Like, do you remember a couple of years ago, they decided, I think correctly, and I think they should have persevered, they were going to like really clamp down on shirt pulling in the penalty area from set pieces. And they kind of said, look, in the first few weeks, there might be dozens of penalties, but you'll soon learn. And everyone
you'll figure it out. Yep.
Yeah. And everyone went, oh, this is rubbish. There's penalties being given all the time. And so they just stopped doing it. And that's what tends to happen with a lot of these directives is a directive comes in, it's interpreted too much to the extreme. And then they just, and instead of just going, why don't we try and find a middle ground? They just abandon it. I'm cautiously optimistic that's what's happening here is they did that kind of whole let it flow thing, which some referees seem to interpret as no blood, no foul, which was not really in the spirit of the thing. I think basically what happened was the Euro, and this often happens after international tournaments, right? Because international tournaments are literally refereed by the best official from each country. So the standard of officiating is very, very high. And because people, particularly in England, think like the rest of the world is just one big country, and that they're not separate entities, they go, look at how good the refereeing is everywhere else. And it's like, no, that's the best referee in every country. That's not representative. So you get international tournaments, they're really well officiated, and correctly, people go, okay, what did people like about the Euros? Less VAR interruption, and the games flowed a bit more. But what people meant by that was, not bothering with the pissy fouls where someone just sticks their arse out and falls over. The Premier League initially interpreted that as, let's just let everyone break each other's legs. And then like poor Harvey Elliot gets, literally gets the brunt of that. And then I think that what they've done is, instead of doing that thing they usually go, all right, let's completely abandon it now and go back to what we were doing, that maybe they've hit a bit of a middle ground. And so I think that we probably hit a bit of a sweet spot yesterday where they're doing better with VAR by basically semi-abandoning it. There's a lesson in there. Maybe the more you abandon it, the better it gets. But anyway, that's my thing. But also, like, maybe they fine-tuned that whole let it flow thing a little bit more. I think last season, this game would have been officiated very differently. And obviously, I'm going to say this because I'm an Arsenal fan and it went our way. But honestly, I think it's better. I do think it's better. I do like that let it flow, applied correctly. I do like less VAR intervention. And honestly, I think as a spectacle, the game was better for it. When I think about the two North London derbies last season, which were very fractious, broken up, pissy little games, really, the pair of them, this felt a lot more like a game that to quote Clive, had its own temperature and was allowed to have its own temperature. And yeah, obviously it went our way, but it's not like we were kicking them all over the shop and getting away with it. I think maybe we got a little bit lucky with that white on Kane thing. And look, maybe it was just a one-off. Maybe referees getting a little bit wise to Harry Kane now.
I was thinking that exact same thing, Tim, which is that this is a player who tries to buy penalties to get himself back into games, and he hadn't done anything all game. And I agree with you. I think that's reputational. Yeah,
absolutely. So maybe something's turning around on him. That will be borne out in the fullness of time. But maybe we did get a bit lucky. But then again, in that respect anyway. But then again, I do think that this is largely how games have been officiated this season. I don't think this is an outlier.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, if we're going to talk about dodgy decisions, I think we had at least half a shout for the penalty on Gabriel getting barged in the back in the center of the box. Was it Sanchez that came through him? Anybody remember that? I know we did enough good things. Yeah, it's funny. We have a photographic memory of calls that don't go our way when we're losing games 1-0. When you win them 3-1, everyone says, "Well, I don't really remember that one actually." But
I remember back post header from Aubameyang, and Gabriel was coming in to head it in, and he just went down too early because it was a foul, but he didn't stay up long enough to make it a dead cert. So there you go.
Yeah, to get the full brunt of the. Was it Sanchez through his back? I don't know. Maybe.
Of course it was.
Yeah, of course it was.
He's stupid.
But Paul, I'll give you sort of a fun one just real quick, and we can start to wrap up and get out of here. But like the other really interesting repercussion here is I remember the days of power shift, and right, wasn't that was the funny thing that we made fun of them power shift when they wanted to finishing below us. But to be fair, it pains us to say it, there has been a bit of a power shift, and Arsenal's been behind Spurs. This feels like, two ships passing in the night a bit. Their squad looks lumpy to me. There's some unhappy players there. The coach looks like he doesn't have the players he wants. Remind you of any team you've seen in the past few seasons. His system doesn't look like it's working. He's calling out his players in the press. Their biggest star is either some combination of past it or just not happy being there. They have a player in Dele Alli who, I don't know what he is now, but a shell of whatever he once was. That team is bad. They've been bad. I said they were bad going into this game, and everyone was mad at me for jinxing it. And I, by the way, understand that. Totally warranted, but it worked out for once. Is this an important moment also because it may signal the beginning of a return to a period where Arsenal are in the ascendancy and Spurs now have to go through their rough ride? They've gotten rid of they never had an Arsene Wenger, but Pochettino was sort of the closest thing they've had to a quote unquote successful manager for a series of years, even though they won, let's reiterate, nothing. He's gone. I don't know that they have a solution for that. Mourinho was a disaster. Nuno doesn't look much better. The squad's a mess. Is this it? Is this the critical turning point in this relationship with our hated rival?
It could well be, and I don't normally feel that way. Nuno was deliciously the manager of the month last month, wasn't he? And so they're going to have to endure with him for a little while. I thought he'd be doing better than this. I do actually think he's pretty good tactically. And I thought he was a good fit for this Spurs side.
It feels like Moyes to United to me, but yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
But they had Mourinho before this. And they are a very good counter-attacking team. I mean, they're well set up for it in terms of personnel. So they should have been able to make something happen with this. What's amazing to me is that Daniel Levy, the genius that he is, he should have he had Pochettino. He's ended up spending all that money that he never spent for and with Pochettino right after Pochettino left. It makes no fucking sense. He should have spent this money revitalizing the squad for Pochettino. He had everything. What a sliding doors moment that was, that he decided not to back Pochettino, not to turn around and say, you know what, I'm going to refresh the squad for you instead of Mourinho and now Nuno. I mean, and Ndombele was 53 million. That is the sliding doors moment. And how they get back from there. Back to the point about Arsenal, I look across Spurs and I don't really like any of their players. There's a couple, right? If you were a neutral, there's a couple of these players you'd think, Son or whatever, if you're of a mind. But you like, who's their academy kids here? Skip, Jaffa Cakes, Tanganga. Tangerine Skip. Jaffa Cakes.
I love the name Skip though, because it literally just sounds like a big bin.
Yeah,
which is where he belongs, to be fair, and their whole club.
I'm not saying like that their supporters don't like these guys. Like, they're fine. But if I'm a 17-year-old, a 14-year-old coming to the Premier League and looking for teams that excite me, there was a few years ago, it worried me that we'd given up the crown of the team to be excited. I look at Spurs, I'm like, there's nothing here that moves me. There's nothing there in their football, in their direction, on the pitch in terms of people looking at it. None of it makes any sense.
Can you tell me what a Brian Gill is?
Hale. Yeah, he's a bit lightweight. He's a winger. He's a good dribbler, but he's so far away from being enough to move the needle on these guys. You know, I was a bit worried when they got him in the summer, and I looked at our signings. And I'm like, how? Like, you look across our 6 signings, they all make sense. They all contribute. They all provide to the clarity, the direction, to the style of play. God.
I think it's a point is that the guys that were supposed to be good for them aren't. Like, Ndombele is not playing well. Giovanni Lo Celso is not good. Like,
and Ndombele was the absolute darling of the stats community, wasn't he? They loved him.
And he's a guy who can dribble and do nothing else. The point is, like, it hasn't worked. And if you look at the two things that you'd say they can still kill you with these guys, it's Son and Kane. Yeah. Son is, 29 and probably wishes he had moved on. Kane definitely wishes he had moved on and has dodgy ankles. And there's really very little behind that. Lucas Moura, also 29. So, like, their era is ending and they don't have the incumbents. Our era of aging players, most of them have moved on except for Aubameyang, and we will have to have an incumbent for that. That has to be solved, but we have him. I don't know. I mean, Clive, it's very funny because a few weeks ago you would have said there's a couple weeks left for Arteta to save his job. He has done that. Now it's over to you, Nuno, because I think he's in that same position now where he's got a couple of weeks to potentially save his job. He clearly wasn't the guy they wanted, which means that, unlike in Arteta where there was a lot of backing internally, you wonder how committed they would be to him at all. They don't really look like they know what they want to be under him. And it's an interesting time. I mean, this isn't a Spurs podcast, but laughing at Spurs is always enjoyable. So before we say goodbye, I thought it was worth it. Do you think that we can throw a little dirt on their coffin, or is it just a bit soon for that?
Yeah, it's just decisions. We've made some bad decisions recently, and so have they. They got bored with Pochettino, really, and should have looked at it and realised what he was bringing to the club. He's given them some of their biggest, happiest moments, and I know it didn't end in trophies, but they had respect. They built their infrastructure based on, Champions League money. They were able to go and gamble on the fact that Pochettino was there, much like we did with Wenger. They gambled. The training ground, again, Pochettino had a massive influence on that and what happens there, how they use data. He brought that all in. The guy was decent, right? I don't like to admit it, but he was decent. But they got bored of him. They decided once they got to Champions League final that they'd arrived. And so they go and spend 50 million a year on Mourinho. And people have worked out their tricks. So nobody was buying, their players for 60 million like Eriksen or Rose anymore. They're thinking, we're not doing that for you anymore. Kyle Walker went, but we're not going to do that. They lost their build-up through Dembele and replacing people like Højbjerg, for example. So the Dembele centre midfield has gone. Dele Alli's lost himself. Son and Kane, those three up front, they were good players, right? So you can't deny it. And their fullbacks are much weaker. Their centre-backs are aged now, the Valride and Vertonghen. They're no longer there, one, and they're just aging and replaced them with Mustafis all over the place. So they've got no stability. They wanted to be this big club, almost like they were fattening themselves up for a sale. And then COVID come along. They wanted to get their revenues on their ground. It didn't quite happen. It will happen. They got some decisions to make. They got to reset. And this is what I've been saying for a little while now. Spurs have a problem. They don't know it's here yet. Well, now we can all see. Right? And now we can all see it. And it's like, this has been in the post for a while, and Son and Kane have masked it. Much like maybe for some people, our FA Cup wins masked where we were actually going. And yes, we have got people out of our dressing room, but it's cost us a bank loan to get them out and pay them off. So we're on the way back. But when our year-end results come out, it won't look healthy. But then next year it might look a bit better. And so we're on the way back. We've accepted where we are. They haven't yet. And their problems are to come. And I can't wait unless Nuno goes back free and says, you know what, I might as well go down fighting, go back free, have my 3 calamitous centre-backs together and hit my front three and see what happens. And unless he does that, he's toast because he has no support. 5th choice is not good. Everyone knows he's not really solidified, so the players are going to check out on him. In fact, it may have already happened, as we saw on Sunday.
And I think we'll finish with this, Tim. He deserves a mention. We haven't talked about him a lot. Talked about him a lot when we were down, so let's talk about him before we say goodbye. Mikel Arteta has every reason to be beaming, to feel pride about this. I feel certain that he was heavily involved in the recruitment of the new players, in the vision for what the system was going to be. He was very specific in what he needed, I believe. Some of the moves, like White and Ramsdale, people were very skeptical. They look okay so far to me. But some of the moves, like Odegaard on a permanent move at the price we paid, look like a masterstroke. Tomiyasu, a masterstroke. Sambi and Tavares, again, same thing. So Edu certainly deserves some credit there. But between that and Arteta devising this system and it starting to look like, it really makes sense. It is very easy, just like when the bad results happen, to over-index them, especially. Just if you want, just go back and look at the lineups we put out for those first 3 games. That doesn't excuse them, but it may help explain them. These 3 games don't fix everything, but is it fair to say that Arteta once again has slipped the hangman's noose at a moment of darkness and reminded everyone that he's got something about him with a vision that seems certainly, if not, look, I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to overcommit one way or the other, but I think it is fair to say that this win, coming off of 2 functional wins, I think has everybody back on side willing to see where it goes from here, and he deserves all the credit in the world for engineering it. Yeah,
he's ridden this out, and we all have to be fair and say that because we all said that this game was the really key one, and Arsenal won it convincingly. So he definitely has. I think, I share your desire not to overcommit because I'm still not quite on this is absolutely the guy. I think for me, I'm not thinking about it that much about, whether he's the right guy or whatever, just because, first of all, I think it's clear that the club are really behind him. But I think the thing is, for me at the moment, you're seeing a lot fewer sackings, I think, in the Premier League. And I think that's largely because of COVID and clubs don't want to be paying managers off. But I also think and have thought for a while that the managerial market is depressed and there are more kind of big teams or teams with aspirations to be big teams than there are big managers. And one of the things that I think has probably saved Arteta, certainly during last winter, is what does the market look like? Like, if you get rid of Arteta, like, who do you get? Look at, like, Everton had to get Benitez.
Look who's coaching Barcelona.
Well, yeah, and they're in like a whole world of trouble, but financially, but like Everton aren't and Spurs aren't. But look, they really they had to go 4th, 5th in their lists this summer. Crystal Palace had to do that as well with Vieira and take it. Like, Crystal Palace kind of almost took the Arsenal route in kind of gambling on a youngish manager, albeit Vieira had infinitely more experience than Arteta. He had a couple of managerial jobs, but none really with the profile of a Premier League team, and he wasn't great at Nice. And they've just had to go. They had to work down their list a bit and go, okay, let's go with this, like new projects, younger players, etc., etc. Whereas Everton have gone for Ancelotti and Benitez recently, who were good coaches, but probably aren't really anymore for not for clubs who are aspiring to kind of really move up the table. Spurs had to settle on Nuno, and we all know they settled is the word there. Like
very
Nuno, publicly, yes. yeah. Like Nuno didn't just leave. Like Nuno left Wolves because he'd run out of ideas at Wolves, and he's walked into the Spurs job. And there are a lot of managers like this at the moment who are kind of hanging around quite a bit just because there's a real paucity of other managers on the market. So like one of the questions, we don't necessarily have to ask as fans because it's not our job, but a club has to ask itself is, if we get rid of this guy, who the hell do we bring in? Because the market's so sparse, and don't like. I think that's played in Arteta's favour, and so we might be moving back into an era where managers do get a little bit of patience. I think about like David Moyes at Everton. Like everyone remembers that for 11 years he was great at Everton. There was a season where they finished 17th, and in this day and like in the middle of his reign, he'd have been sacked. Like, maybe not in this day, but, pre-COVID, like, let's say that happened in 2017, 18, he'd have been sacked well before the end of that season. But so maybe we are moving into an era where managers do get a little bit more patience. And look, it will be really, really interesting to see. And I guess as someone who really vouched for us getting Arteta because I was curious about it and I really wanted to see where it would go. Well, maybe I'm kind of getting what I wished for because now he's got his players, now he's got his system. And so now I'm going to see where it goes. Like this is almost like the start for Arteta.
Yeah. And I think we said going into this season, there are really no more excuses. Then the irony is the season starts massively full of excuses because half the team's missing with COVID and whatnot. But now, there's really no excuses. And to be fair, since the now part, since the part we always joked about, the season starting after the transfer window, so far so good. 3 games played, 3 wins, including a hammering of Spurs in the derby. I think he deserves huge credit. Look, I haven't always believed he could get it done. I still want to see consistently effective attacking football from Arsenal under Arteta. This was brilliant. I enjoyed the absolute hell out of it. I do think these ships are passing in the night, and now it just has to be confirmed. I mean, you could argue that Brighton is a harder game, that they are a better team, a better coach team, and will provide a bigger challenge. I'll be very interested to watch them go up against Vieira's Palace tonight to see what they're about because, that's really what it boils down to. We have, I believe it is Brighton next, right? Yeah, Brighton away on Saturday. So that, and we've been good against Potter's Brighton for the most part, I think. Is that right? Actually, we were good last season. And the season before, maybe not so much. You know what? I'm off the rails, so why don't we just stop? It's fine. It's 2 hours. No one's listening anymore. I think we can leave it there. First half rewatch for patrons tomorrow. And obviously another podcast later this week and a whole lot more to do to celebrate this victory. And more than anything, I hope you, wherever you are, I hope you just enjoyed the hell out of it. I said at the beginning of the pod, when things are going poorly on the pitch, when the football isn't delighting you, the analysis takes over and the emotion is less of it. You get less of that punch the air joy and laughter and celebration. This was just unbridled joy. And I loved it. It was great. And it does have us looking up the table again. And I certainly think at a minimum, a European place, some kind of European place is back on now. And we can try to go achieve the goals that we would have set for ourselves at the beginning of the season. So the project, to use that word again, feels very much started now. And now it's just a matter of where we go from here. Paul's on Twitter, Paul's my pants. Thanks, Paul.
Woohoo!
Clive's on Twitter, Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Tim's on Twitter, Roberto. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
My name is Elliot Smith. I will let you know that it is the 27th of September, which means we've got 3 days left of our fundraiser. And to be fair, it's slowed down quite a bit, having achieved our goal. I know how you set a goal. You say, here's what we want to hit. We hit it. Couldn't be more proud and thankful for everyone for doing it. But if you do want to go to arsenalvisionpodcast.com, click donate and give to the Arsenal Foundation the last few days, there's still some time for us to send plenty of money to a good cause and celebrate the club being great and not just the charity attached to the club being great. So that'll do it for us. Enjoy your week celebrating in the face of any Spurs fans, friends you may have. We love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 Brighton 0.